All right. So multiply to be the top, add to be the bottom. That's what you got to remember. Multiply to be the top, add to be the bottom. Okay. Let's do some examples with some numbers involved. So example A, 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. Okay. First thing we look for is there a GCF across the whole thing? No. So the next thing we say is, okay, how many terms are there? There are 3. So we're thinking 3 terms, that's the x method. So let's build our first x. To get the number that goes in the top, we take a times c, so front times back. 2 times 6 would be 12. So 12 is what goes in the top. What goes in the bottom here? 7. Always the number in the middle goes in the bottom. What I need are 2 numbers that multiply to be 12 and add to be 7. 3 and 4, or 4 and 3. Doesn't matter what order you put them in, okay? 4 times 3 is 12. 4 plus 3 is 7. That's why those work. So our 2 numbers are 4 and 3. So we filled out the x. The next thing you do is you replace this 7x with a 4x and a 3x. Okay? So I'm writing 2x squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 6. So I'm taking the middle part and I'm replacing it with the 2 sides of the x. Then look at this problem. What's that remind you of? Grouping. It's what we did yesterday, right? That's why he taught us this first. Group it. First 2 together. For folks that were out yesterday, this is what we did yesterday. We did grouping. The first 2 together. What's the GCF of these 2? So we don't pay attention to this part yet. 2x squared and 4x. What do they have in common? 2 and an x. What would be left in their parentheses? X plus 2. Second group. God, it seems to be a problem. You said right there. Well, you're talking. You're not taking notes. What's the GCF of these 2? 3. What kind of 3? Positive 3. So it's a plus 3. What's left in their parentheses? They matched. That means I did it right. Correct? I did it right anyway, but I means things worked out. It means it'll factor. So what are the factors for that trinomial? And then 2x plus 3. So we get from a trinomial to binomial times binomial. So we're undoing what we did a couple of weeks ago. Okay?
So
Go ahead. I'm using the grouping method to break it apart. I'm changing it from a 3-termed polynomial to a 4-termed polynomial so that I can use grouping to tear it apart. That's kind of like you got to use the right tool for the job, and that's the tool for your job.
If you can't find the 2 numbers, does that mean that it will
That's true. If you try everything that multiplies to be the top and none of them add to be the bottom, then that means the trinomial won't factor. That's exactly right. Okay. Go ahead. All right. To build the x. So you want 2 numbers that multiply to be what's up here, and add to be this. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 plus 3 is 7. You're always going to multiply to get the top and add to get the bottom. And you just got to find which to do that. Because there are other options to multiply to be 12. There's 6 and 2, but that adds to be 8, not 7. So that's why we didn't use those. Okay. Yeah, front times back. Always front times back. Let's look at another one. X squared plus 3x plus 2. Is there a GCF? No, not anything that goes into all three of them. There's three terms, so I'm going to go to the X method. What's in front? 1. So it's 1 times 2 is 2. That goes in the top. What goes in the bottom? 3. All right, so we're setting the X up. We need something that multiplies to be 2, adds to be 3. Yeah, 1 and 2, 2 and 1. That's the only options for 2. So this one's a pretty easy one. So 2 and 1. What am I doing next? I'm rewriting it, and I'm replacing the 3x with these two pieces. Okay, so x squared plus, I'm going to put 1x and then the 2x plus 2. So my 2's are on in the same group because I know that 2's in common between those two. That makes it easier on myself. It does not matter what order you put these two in the middle in as. Okay, I've got 2 first in my x, but I put it last here. It doesn't matter what order you put those in. You put them in the order you think makes it easiest on you. It ends up being okay no matter which order you do that. Now, group the first 2 together. What do they have? 1x. What's left in the parentheses? X plus 1. Good, Adam. What's in the second group? What do they got in common? What kind of 2? Positive 2. So it's a plus 2, leaving x plus 1. So the factored form, x plus 1, x plus 2. We factored another trinomial using the X method. Okay. Let's try this one. 2x squared minus 7x plus 3. I'm throwing a negative sign in there. It's going to make us have to think a little bit. What goes in the top of the x? 6, positive 6. What goes in the bottom of the x? Negative 7, because it's minus. So we need 2 numbers that multiply to be a positive number and add to be a negative number. What do we know about those 2 numbers? They're both what? They're both negative, right? Because the only way you can multiply to be positive is have the same signs, right? Positive times positive is positive. Negative times negative is positive. Go ahead. Negative 6 times negative 1, does that give me positive 6? What's negative 6 plus negative 1? Negative 7. That's the right 2 numbers. Good job. So negative 6, negative 1. Now what am I doing with those? Yeah, replacing the negative 7x with those. So 2x squared. I'm going to put the negative 6x and then negative 1x. Doesn't matter what order you put those 2 in the middle in. Make sure you keep your signs the same as they are in your x. Group. What do those 2 have in common? 2x. What's that leave in their parentheses? Is it plus 3 or minus 3? Minus 3, because it's a minus here, right? So it should be a minus there. What do these 2 have in common? Nothing but a 1, right? But because this is negative, what do I have to do? Yeah, pull out a negative GCF. And that changes the sign inside so that it matches. And then you've got your factored form. X minus 3, 2x minus 1. Four x squared minus 9x plus 5. What's in the top of the x? 20. There's a lot of options of things that multiply to be 20. You got 1 and 20, 2 and 5, or 2 and 10, 5 and 4. What goes in the bottom? -9. Okay. So we need something. We need the pair that multiplies to be positive 20 and adds to be -9. Yeah, -5, -4. And then I'm just going to rewrite it. 4x squared. I'm going to put the minus 4x first because that makes sense because I got a 4x squared in the front. That makes the GCF easier for me. Minus 5x plus 5. Group. 4x. So leave in parentheses. X minus 1. What do I pull out of the second group? -5. Changes it to x minus 1. Factored form. X minus 1 is one of them. 4x minus 5 is the other one. Not bad. Pretty easy so far. If we're okay with grouping from yesterday, this is just one step more than that, where you got to do your x to get your grouping set up. Let's look at another one. Let's say we had 2x squared plus 13x minus 7. So move the negative to a different spot. Makes it a little bit different. So what's on the top of this x? -14. What's on the bottom? Positive 13. We need something that multiplies to be a negative number and adds to be a positive. If it multiplies to be a negative, what do you know about the two numbers? One's positive, one's negative. Okay? So we know one of them's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So what things multiply to be 14? 7 and 2. So if I make the 7 negative, -7 plus positive 2, is that 13? No. If I make the 2 negative, what's 7 plus -2? Positive 5. That's still not 13? Is that the only thing that multiplies to be 14?
No.
What? Yeah, 1 times 14. Which one should be negative? The 1. Why? Yeah, because it's got to add to be a positive 13, so we pick the bigger one to be positive. All right? Then replace the 13x with those two. I'm going to go 2x squared minus 1x plus 14x minus 7. That's the order that I wanted to go in because 14 and 7 have 7 in common. That's what I was thinking. Group. First two have x in common. Good. So that leave in parentheses. 2x minus 1. What do the second two have in common? Positive or negative? Positive. Why is it positive, Adam? Because the first one's positive. That's where you can tell. Whatever the sign of this is, that's the sign that's going to come out here. So that's a plus. There's our 2x minus 1. Final answer. Yeah, 2x minus 1. X plus 7. Not bad. Not bad. X squared minus 6x plus 6. Goes on the top of our x. Goes on the bottom. Okay, so we need two numbers that multiply to be positive 6, add to be negative 6. So our options are what? 6 times 1 and 3 times 2. That's the only things that multiply to be 6. If they're going to be multiplying to be a positive and adding to be a negative, then they both need to be negative. So what's -6 plus -1? -7. That ain't it. What is -3 times -2? That's +6. What's -3 plus -2? -5. That's not -6. So that doesn't work either. So this is what Molly was talking about earlier. She said, if I've tried everything and it doesn't work in the x, that means this will not factor. Okay? So will not factor. Another word that I'll let you write for this is called prime. That's what it's a prime polynomial. Gee. X squared plus 8x plus 15. Let's see if we can do this one. Yeah, see if you can do it by yourself. See if you can do this one by yourself. I'll kind of be slow about doing it so that you can check yourself as you go so you don't get too far off. And I'm kind of hoping somebody will notice something with some of these. It works with some of these, but not with others. Set up my X. Hopefully you're already past that. And you may have done the middle part in a different order than I did, and that's okay. We'll end up the same at the end. What do we notice about the factors at the end and the x? They're the same. When has that happened? It's happened on a few of the problems, but not every one of them. If I look back at example E, it didn't happen. I had 14 and -1. That's not what's here. Okay? Example D, I had -5 and -4. That's not what's here. They don't match completely. The 5's there, but the -4 is not. Up here on C, it didn't do that. I had -6 and -1, and that's not, they don't match. Example B, 2 and 1, 2 and 1. What's the difference in B and C in the original problem? Okay. What do you mean? You're around the right idea. Does anybody notice anything similar, Caleb? Is it B or A that you're talking about? Because there's the B is in the middle. Okay, the 2x squared, and this one has just plain x squared. There's a difference in the two. Plain x squared, and it was the same. Let's see if that was the case on the last one we did. Plain x squared, and it was the same numbers. Wonder if that's a shortcut. It is. And if you got x squared, just a plain x squared, no number in front of it, maybe you had minus 13x plus 30, something like that, and you set up your x, what multiplies to be positive 30 and adds to be negative 13? Negative 10 and negative 3. So my factors, because there's nothing in front of x squared, or there's a 1 in front of it technically, because of that, I could go straight to this. and get a shortcut on those. Okay. If there's something in front of that, you've got to do the grouping stuff. If there's a number in front of x squared, you have to do the grouping stuff. If there's nothing in front of x squared, you can go straight to your factors from your x that you set up. Okay. So there's a shortcut for you to take on some of the problems. Not all the problems, definitely not all the problems, but some of them. Take advantage of that. It saves you a lot of time, a lot of effort. Okay. When you come back from lunch, we'll be working on page 586. I'll have it on the screen. And then page 596.